Today I'm going to give you my first impressions on the Tier 7 tech tree Italian destroyer, the Cuniberti. And I'll start right off the bat by saying that this thing, and I think the rest of the Italian destroyer line, is pretty good for winning games. Not because of their impressive damage output against all classes of ships. In fact, I kind of think these destroyers are not very good at putting out high damage games, but they are very good at dealing with enemy destroyers primarily because of the guns, and we'll get into that a little bit here. In fact, I'd say that's the whole reason we end up winning this game. It's not going to be a very high damage game at all, but we're going to finish with 3,000 base XP, which is a good indicator of a decently well-played game, much more than the raw damage total is. But before we get there, we'll start by running down the stats. You'll note that with this build, which I will show you at the end of the video, my HP on the Cuniberti is 19,360. The premium tier 6 French destroyer we looked at on Tuesday, the FR-25, has more HP than this. This is actually kind of low in terms of hit points for a destroyer at tier 10, or not tier 10, tier 7, even with William Sims as an inspiration. Then we go down to the guns. It's got 6 of them. They are 120 millimeter guns, but they shoot both high explosive and semi-armor piercing. And we'll see the sap here a little bit against this Akizuki. It is absolutely devastating to destroyers when it hits them. The sap does a maximum damage of 2,600. And of course, it also fires HE. The HE is a little bit more anemic. It only does a maximum damage of 1,700, and it's got a 7% fire chance, which isn't all that great. Now, when you build for the guns by using the commander I'm using, which is the gun-focused Italian commander, you can get the reload down to 4.8 seconds, and that's quite good, especially considering these things shoot sap. The range is a little bit anemic. I've got it up to 10.8 kilometers using some trickery, but otherwise it's like 10.1, not very far at all. And the turret traverse is fine at about 15 seconds. The torpedoes, which you can see we're launching quite regularly, or we will be throughout the course of this game. There are 8 torpedoes. They have a 90-second reload. They only do a maximum damage of 10,000, so when you take torpedo damage reduction into account on larger ships like battleships or even cruisers, you're really not going to be doing 10,000 damage with a single torpedo. It's more going to be like 6, 7, maybe 8k, depending on the torpedo damage reduction. So they kind of hit like pillows. And they are the floating Italian sea mines. They've only got a speed of 56 knots, but they do have a 12-kilometer range and a 1.1-kilometer detectability, so they're stealthy and exceptionally long range. And now we will see the guns in action against the Akizuki. I guess actually we won't, because we're using one of the Cuniberti's unique consumables, which is, of course, the exhaust smoke generator. The Cuniberti gets 4 of them. It also gets 4 engine boosts, and we'll talk about those in a minute, because they are not normal engine boosts. But of course, these smoke screens deploy for about 60 seconds. They offer mobile concealment when you're going at full speed, and you can use them to close the distance if you're going to try to torpedo a battleship potentially, or in destroyer v destroyer fights to give yourself an advantage. And that's essentially what we've done here. We were just trying to farm a little bit of damage off the Atlantico, but the Akizuki was pushing into us the whole time. So when our smoke screen dissipates, he gets spotted, and we are going to take a lot of damage here. But we are on maybe about even health with the Akizuki. Maybe he even had a little bit more than us. And you can see our sap is just absolutely devastating. It has no problem whatsoever finishing off the Akizuki before he can take us out. And the Akizuki is no slouch in a DD versus DD gunfight. It's actually one of the better ones at tier 7 for doing that. And yet we are still able to take him out at basically the same amount of HP as us, maybe even a little bit more. So the Akizuki goes down for our first kill of the game, and we managed to land one of the torpedoes on the Atlantico. But now comes a stretch where maybe not quite a lot is going to happen. So let's finish with the stats here. The AA is what we've got next, and much like the Tier 6 premium Italian destroyer we looked at on Tuesday, this thing's AA appears to, well, absolutely suck, so there's no universe in which you can rely on it. The maneuverability, on the other hand, is kind of nice. It's got a maximum speed of 39 knots with a 4.3 second rudder shift and a 650 meter turning circle, so it's quite maneuverable for a destroyer. And the concealment is also bad. It's got a high base value of concealment, but the way I've got this build set up, which doesn't include Eric Bai as an inspiration, we're looking at 6.2 kilometers by sea. And that's not very good, but, you know, keep in mind you do have 4 charges of this exhaust screen smoke generator, and they reload fairly quickly, too. It's a minute and 20 seconds, so that's like 2 minutes or so, right? Yeah, 60 plus 60 is 120, so 2 minutes on the smoke screen, not a terribly long reload. Deploys for 31 seconds, and you get 4 of them, so that does help with the poor concealment. And the engine boost also helps, because this is a unique engine boost. It is better than even the French in terms of the speed boost it gives you. It is a 25% speed boost, whereas I think the French only have 20%, if I'm not mistaken. It might also be 25, but this is a 25% speed boost. It only lasts for about 25, 26 seconds. But it can take you from your maximum speed of 39 knots all the way up to like 48 knots in a straight line. So if you get spotted and the enemy team starts shooting at you, you can instantly deploy a speed boost rather than a smoke. And oftentimes that thing will make you zip away so fast that the enemy won't even be able to hit you. So you don't even have to waste a smoke. And because it's got such short duration, you get 4 charges of that thing too, whereas most destroyers only get 2. It does take a minute, well, 116 seconds to reload, so over a minute, but again, a fairly short reload time, and you could theoretically use all 4 of the charges of the smoke screen and all 4 of the charges of the engine boost in one game. Now, all these things add up together to make this kind of like a brawly sort of destroyer. You could, of course, try to get close to battleships and torpedo them, but that's not really what this thing is about. This thing is equipped with the tools primarily to deal with other enemy destroyers. It's not very good at dealing with cruisers. No destroyers really are, but this destroyer is especially bad at it, and the Italian line in general is as well. Because these torpedoes are so slow, they are stealthy, but since they're so slow, they're quite easy to dodge. Unless, for example, you are an overconfident Pommern who has been chasing both destroyers on the enemy team for the majority of the game and has used his sonar, but no longer has the sonar up. If you're an overconfident Pommern who doesn't change his course or direction, well, then these torpedoes can be quite devastating, although it does take about, well, how many is that? 4? Let's see. 8. Or I'm sorry, 7, right? No, 8 of them. Yes, 8 torpedoes is what it takes to sink the Pommern when he wasn't even on full health. So, you know, these things are not very potent, but they can dev strike battleships. They're not going to really hit cruisers, especially cruisers that are maneuvering in any kind of way or have sonar. And while the sap is good, we could probably use it here to take down the Cleveland if our teammate didn't come in and secure the kill there. While the sap is very good, it's not like having AP on a destroyer, because, you see, if you had AP on this thing, you could probably get within, 5-6 kilometers of a broadside cruiser and citadel it quite efficiently. Sap is not really going to do that, and of course the HE is rather anemic. So this thing doesn't have very good tools to fight cruisers. The tools are okay against battleships, of course. The torpedoes can hit them. The sap can damage their superstructure. The HE can start fires, although I don't think it's exceptionally good at it. No, what these Italian destroyers excel at is dealing with enemy destroyers because of the devastating effects of the sap ammo type. Now, if it's a 1v1 fight versus practically any destroyer at tier 7, I think the Cuniberti has a good chance of coming out on top. Of course, if the destroyer has assistance, you don't have a lot of HP, especially compared to some of the things that you're going to fight. Like, for example, the Akizuki, which has more HP than this. So if that destroyer has support, well, it's very easy to die. But if they don't, and you can get in there and hit them a few times with sap, they will go down. And we recognize here that we have to go after this Xian Yang because this is going to decide the game. He's at practically full health, but we're able to smoke up as he spots us. And he does take us down to 185 HP, but because he's shot, our teammates are spotting him and he can't see us. That gives us the advantage, and we're able to help finish him off here. We miss there with that salvo, and then we hit him with one sap shell, so we only need one more hit to take him down, but luckily one of our teammates comes in there and secures the kill, which is just fine with me. That eliminates the final enemy destroyer, and I am still alive with only 185 HP to my name, but I'm still alive. And I had a direct hand in taking down both of the enemy destroyers and doing significant damage to them. I also got 10 defender ribbons for shooting a ship inside of a cap. So all of this together is going to add up to excellent XP at the very end, especially if I can secure a capture circle, which I'm going to want to do, because if we look at the time left, there's a little bit over 3 minutes. It's 3 versus 3, but some of my ships are in grave danger, especially the cruiser, of being sunk. And the enemy team is really not that far behind us on points. It's 200 points, but if we allow them to keep this capture circle, they may very well be able to overtake us by the end of the game on points. So it's crucial that I take this capture circle, which shouldn't be terribly difficult, but we do have a situation here where our battleship is backed up against this island, and the Atlantico is coming into the capture circle. I cannot afford to get spotted even one time by the Atlantico, so I'm not going to push in. Instead, I'm going to launch my torpedoes, because if the Atlantico pushes in, they're going to catch him. But if he doesn't, and he turns out, well, they're going to miss, but then at least I can get into the capture circle. And I'm pinging my battleship teammate to take out the Jean Bar. He manages to do that, so that gives us a pretty commanding points lead at this point. So we should be okay to take this cap, or at least win this game, provided our battleship teammate doesn't go down. And I don't think he's going to, because the Atlantico is... Well, I think I understand why he's maneuvering this way around the island. He's probably concerned that I'm still alive, and he might eat torpedoes if he comes through that gap there, which he would be correct. But at the same time, if he came through that gap, he'd probably be able to get a crossfire angle on our friendly battleship, because you see he's bow tanking the red kiting away. So if that Atlantico comes through this gap, he probably has our teammate's broadside, and that guy goes down. But of course, the Atlantico doesn't decide to do that. Instead, he decides that, well, he's going to go at the friendly battleship from the front, maybe. But not even that, because he's actually going to turn away and kite. I guess he's got his secondaries firing on the battleship, but I think this guy is going to stay alive. I'm not sure what he is. He's firing HE for some reason, which I think is a little bit questionable, but in any case, we are going to be able to take this cap, and essentially, even if our battleship goes down, that should secure the win. So I think that's sort of what these Italian destroyers are all about. They're not very good, I don't think, in terms of being able to put out a lot of high damage on big capital ships like battleships. The torpedoes are just too slow. They don't hit very hard. The guns don't have a ton of range. The sap is a great ammo type, but the fact that it doesn't have AP, I think, holds it back a little bit in terms of dealing with cruisers. And the HE, well, it's just sort of anemic, but even so, with the exhaust smoke generator and the special engine boost that is the short duration but gives you a massive, massive speed boost, these destroyers as a line are certainly unique and don't really play like any other destroyers in the game, so it might be worth exploring the line just for that reason, but also just because these destroyers are good at dealing with enemy destroyers thanks to the devastating effect of sap. I think that is the real highlight on them, and honestly, I think there are a few lowlights. I don't think these destroyers are as universally effective as some other nations' classes of destroyers, but they are interesting to play, they are fun, and this one in particular is pretty good at winning games, 3,000 base XP. Let's take a look at our commander build, of course, and our ship build. We've got aiming systems, propulsion mod, concealment, and main battery reload mod. And then for our commander, we're using the French gunboat, or not the French, the Italian gunboat commander Luigi Rizzo with Sims and Megatron as inspirations, observant range, look at me now, this skill that was recently buffed, 1,000 cuts, and smoke on the water, and of course unstoppable. So that's the build. I think the gunboat commander suits these destroyers, and I hope you enjoyed this video. If so, give it a thumbs up, consider subscribing if you haven't already, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.